Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith and you're watching another semi-rapid fire review on the channel where I try and review books within a shorter period of time since I read them. Normally within 24 hours. It's been a couple of weeks in this case, but don't worry about it too much. Today we're talking about Adrian Tchaikovsky's Children of Memory. The lovely people at Tor kindly sent me this free copy of the book in order to review it, regardless of where books come from. Nobody's paying me to talk about books and all opinions are my own. I'm also going to keep this as spoiler-free as humanly possible, but if you haven't already read Children of Time and Children of Ruin, I would recommend pausing this video, going and reading those, and then coming back once you have done. We'll chat about it then. I'll also link the story graph for the book below in case you want to check out any user-generated content warnings. Just some quick little details for you. This is coming out from Tor on the 24th of November, and it is one of two Adrian Tchaikovsky books coming out towards the end of this year. There is another one that I have on my TBR that is called The City of Last Chances, and if you haven't read any Adrian Tchaikovsky before and you haven't read Children of Time, I highly recommend picking that up. I appreciate that I told you to leave if you hadn't already read it, but on the off chance that you've stuck around, go and read Children of Time. It's so good. Yeah, that's in frame. This book is following on from the events of both Children of Time and Children of Ruin. We have had a time jump. That's not something that we're not used to in this series. We are very familiar with them, but we have moved into the future and we have a dual narrative. We have the colony of Emir, which is on one of the semi-terraformed worlds that we've been encountering throughout this series. We also have a narrative of the crew of a ship, which is a multifaceted crew, including Portiids, the spiders, cephalopods, and other things. Again, if you haven't read Children of Ruin, it won't make a lot of sense. A whole bunch of the crew going on, and we have this narrative down on the colony, and the two intersect. We're going backwards and forwards in time. We are skipping. It's a bit of a wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey kind of affair. I'll read you the blurb because I think that will make more sense. On Emir, Captain Holt built a future on an empty world, but generations later his descendants are struggling to survive. As harvests worsen and technology fails, they fear their community is being observed, that they're not alone. And indeed, explorers from the stars have arrived, their goal, to study their long-lost human cousins. Yet the planet hides deeper mysteries, as the visitors aren't the only watchers, and when the starfarers discover the scale of their mistake, it will be too late to escape. There you go. One of the things that I think this blurb doesn't get across is that this is following on from the themes of books 1 and 2, where we examine intelligence in creatures that are not Homo sapiens, that are not humans. It is different from the first two for reasons that I can't really get into, but rather than looking at spiders or cephalopods, we're looking at corvids, which is fascinating. I'm a bird lover. I'm not like a bird person, but the idea of intelligent birds is just very fascinating to me. And I really liked that Tchaikovsky went down this route of looking at that not through the lens of the virus, which we've seen in the previous books. So if you were wondering if that would come into play, it does. I don't think that's too much of a spoiler. I know it isn't in the blurb, but I think it's important to mention because obviously the selling point of the first two have been those creature elements. This is probably the most, not the most human focused, but the most focused on humanity than the other two, because obviously we have non-human characters, but they are very, very geared into looking at this colony, and obviously a good chunk of the book is happening on this colony. When I've talked about the previous books, particularly Children of Time, one of the big things that I said was I wanted less of the human plotline and more of the spider plotline, and actually I think this book has managed to balance it best, and I think part of that is to do with the actual plot of the book and the structure of it, and that the two stories are much more interwoven, that's the word I'm looking for there, but also I think just that the balance is best of we're staying with the interesting parts of the story and we're not moving through. There aren't as many time jumps as there are in previous books, and so it moves a lot faster. We're just moving around in time as the reader, and it keeps it very interesting. There's a lot of intrigue, there's a lot of either dramatic irony where you know something that the characters don't know, or the exact opposite of that. I don't know what that's called, but where the characters are aware of something that you as the reader haven't yet put together because you're reading it out of order. It's one of my favourite kind of sci-fi books. I think it makes things really eerie, it makes things really spooky. I thought this would be a great Halloween read. It wasn't out in time for Halloween, but for me, I read it really close to then and I had a good time with it. I think it's got a lot of creepy elements to it and a lot of almost psychological horror thoughts going on in there, or that kind of the same vein as psychological horror elements. Something like Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey, I actually could draw quite a lot of comparisons between the two in terms of what is reality, where am I, what's going on here. That's a very different book, dealing much more with serial killers, but as a touchstone of a thriller that I have read, that was the example that came to mind. I think that other than the timey-wimey stuff and the fact that we are in space, this feels the least sci-fi of all of them. It is still firmly a sci-fi, but in terms of like space and space travel and such. I think this has the least amount of that in it, certainly for the bulk of the book. In some ways, this felt much more character-driven than previous books in the series, because we are really getting to know specific characters who stay with us for the whole book. In some ways, I think something like Children of Time has more recognisable characters, but that might just be because of the way this book is set up. But I really enjoyed getting to know both the crew of the spaceship and the people down on the colony. I thought that was a really well-handled thing, given that for most of the book you're just there going, I don't know what's happening, but please continue to take me on this journey with you. Having now read the entire series, I think I would say that Children of Time is probably the strongest book, because it has the most obvious structure to it. It has the most interesting kind of examination of that evolution, and I think it's the easiest sell to people who haven't read the series or haven't read much sci-fi or haven't read any Adrian Tchaikovsky. You can just say it's got giant sentient space spiders and get on with your life. People will either want that or they won't, and I think that this is a much harder sell in terms of, I can't really explain to you what's happening here. It's happening, and there's really interesting bits, and it almost felt to me like 3 different thought experiment story ideas chunked together. And in some ways, possibly a negative for you, particularly if you're the kind of person who feels like the first 2 books were a little bit overwritten, which I think they are just slightly. I still love them, but they are a little bit overwritten. And if that was a criticism you had of the previous books, I don't think that changes here. However, it is a really interesting 3 thought experiments chunked together, and I liked that element of it. And I think that having read more Tchaikovsky now than when I first read the first book, I can see how it got to this point and why it is structured the way that it is and why it's shaped the way it is and the ideas that it's trying to put forth in what ways. Still think it could probably be 100 pages shorter, but I think that of every single book that he's written, so perhaps that's just me. I would say if you want to read this, you need to have read Children of Time and Children of Ruin. You definitely need to have read both. It is definitely continuing on from that despite the long gap between the 2 books. It's a continuity thing. Just read them. I would recommend doing a reread. I reread Children of Time. I didn't have time to reread Children of Ruin, and it took just a little bit of catching up, and I think there are characters within this story that would benefit you to have the context of the previous book. Even though a lot of time has passed between these books, I think that emotional character arc would be better if you'd read them before. Basically, I regret not rereading Children of Ruin, and if you're planning on doing this, squeeze a reread in there. You don't need to. If you're familiar enough with the story, if you remember it well enough, you can jump straight into this. You'll be fine. But I think in terms of your enjoyment of the book, you'll have a better time. Understanding, fine. Enjoyment might suffer. Overall, do I think that you should read this? Is this a book worth reading? Is this a series worth reading? I'm going to continue to recommend this series. I won't recommend it to everyone I know, because there are some people who I know really don't like this style of writing and this tone and the way that the book is structured and shaped. They won't enjoy it as much, and if I know that about that person, great. Sometimes it's a great way to find that out about this person. What did you think about this book? It'll indicate how I'll recommend things to you in the future. For me personally, this is a series that definitely works. It's one that I will want to reread in the future. I really enjoyed the audiobook of Children of Time and Children of Ruin. I will eventually, in the fullness of time, hopefully pick up the audiobook of this. I think it'll be a great time, and that's basically everything I wanted to say on it, I think. Thank you so much to Tor for sending the review copy. Thank you to you for watching. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. It makes me feel loved and appreciated. You can also follow me on social media. Come hang out on Discord where we have chill chats about books. Nothing makes me feel more loved and appreciated than my patrons over on Patreon who support the channel and get early access to videos like this and bonus content. If you would like to join their number, click the link down below. Thank you so much for watching. That's all from me, and I will see you in the next one.
There's gonna be some bloopers now.
Again, if you haven't read Children of Ruin, don't come to me for...